Have you ever been abandoned by someone who swore they would never leave you? Jasmine believed she had built a solid family, but in a single night, her world came crashing down. With 3 young children and a broken heart, she watched the man she loved leave without looking back, exchanging everything they had for a life of luxury with another woman. With no money, no prospects, and no time to mourn, Jasmine had to reinvent herself. But what she never imagined was that in the midst of the chaos, she would discover a talent that would completely transform her, and that fate was preparing something much greater than the love she had lost. When life knocks you down, do you get up or accept the fall? This is the story of a woman who chose to get up, and by the time the past tried to return, she had become too strong to look back. The smell of the broth filled the small kitchen as Jasmine stirred the pot, holding Santiago on her lap. The baby grumbled restlessly, and her other 2 children, Linda and Richard, ran around the room with infinite energy. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to ignore the headache caused by tiredness. The doorknob turned, and the door opened with a creak. Samuel walked in, his expensive perfume mingling with the smell of food. He didn't look around the house or at the children. He went straight to Jasmine, serious, distant. She hurried to settle the baby in the car seat. "Samuel, you're early today. Dinner's almost ready." He didn't reply immediately. He calmly removed his jacket and hung it on the chair. Then he straightened his shirt cuffs, as if preparing the ground for something important. "We need to talk." Jasmine felt a shiver run down her spine. Her husband's cold tone didn't fit in with the ordinary evening she was expecting. "All right, but sit down. Let's have dinner first." She tried to smile, ignoring the tension growing in the air. Samuel remained standing. Linda ran over to him, grabbing his leg. "Daddy, Daddy, look at my drawing." He looked down, emotionless, and walked away without even answering. Richard followed, holding a toy car. "Can you play with me later?" "Not now." His voice was sharp. Jasmine frowned. Something was wrong. She picked up a plate and poured herself some broth. "Do you want coffee first?" Samuel let out an impatient sigh. "Jasmine, I got the promotion I wanted." She smiled. "That's great. We're finally going to have a better life." But he remained motionless. He rested his hands on the table and said, "Tomorrow I'll marry another woman." Silence fell heavily on the house. Jasmine's smile disappeared instantly. "What's it like?" Her voice came out in an incredulous whisper. "I'm marrying Patricia." He looked down at the floor, avoiding facing her. "She's the daughter of an influential man. With this marriage, my career will be guaranteed." Jasmine's head spun. She clung to the edge of the sink to stop herself from falling. "Are you leaving me? Are you leaving our children?" Samuel finally faced her, and his blank stare confirmed what words could not express. "What I need, Jasmine, is a woman who matches my new status. Someone sophisticated, independent. Patricia gives me that. What about us?" Her voice faltered. Samuel picked up his jacket, put it on, and walked towards the door. "This is for everyone's own good." The children's screams exploded into the air. Linda clung to his leg, crying. Richard ran to the door, blocking his exit. Samuel sighed, lifted his daughter and pushed her away gently, but without affection. Then he walked past Richard without hesitation. Jasmine stood there, motionless, feeling her heart break as the door closed. The house was plunged into silence. Jasmine felt the weight of abandonment in every corner, in every object that Samuel had left behind. Sitting on the sofa, with Santiago asleep on her lap, she saw Linda and Richard curled up next to her, their faces marked by tears. The sound of Richard's stomach broke the silence. She forced herself to get up. She had to be strong. She walked to the kitchen and poured the little broth that was left. "Let's have dinner, my loves." Linda looked at her plate without enthusiasm. "Will Daddy be back tomorrow?" The question hit Jasmine like a blow. She swallowed, searching for an answer that wouldn't break her daughter's heart even more. "It's just the four of us now, my pretty. But I promise we'll be fine." The words came out with a certainty she didn't feel. That night, lying on the old mattress next to her children, Jasmine didn't sleep. The fear of hunger, bills, and the future consumed her. When the sun rose, she picked up the phone and dialed. "Sophia, I'm sorry to bother you so early, but do you have any work for me? Anything?" The neighbor's voice came from the other end, excited. "Actually, yes. I've got a load of washing and ironing to do. Can you come and pick it up?" Jasmine sighed with relief. "I'll go now." A few minutes later, she arrived at Sophia's house, who welcomed her with a warm smile. "Thank you for helping me, Sophia." "That's great, Jasmine. You've always worked hard." Sophia looked at her curiously. "Did you do something different to your hair?" Jasmine touched the strands. The night before, on an impulse, she had taken a pair of scissors and cut off part of her hair, as if she wanted to rip out the pain along with the strands. "No big deal." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "You know, you're good at it. Have you ever thought about having your hair cut professionally?" Jasmine laughed humorlessly. "With what? Kitchen scissors?" "I'm not kidding. Look, I'm looking to change my look before the company event. You could try it on me." Jasmine's heart raced. "Sophia, I'm not a hairdresser. But you have talent, and the worst that can happen is that I wear a hat." Jasmine hesitated. The fear of making a mistake was paralyzing, but what choice did she have? "All right." Sophia led her to the mirror. Jasmine pinned up her friend's hair, analyzing her facial features. "What do you think of something choppy?" "I trust you." With trembling hands, Jasmine began to cut. With each snip, her hesitation diminished. When she had finished, Sophia's eyes widened. "Jasmine, this looks amazing." She smiled for the first time in days. Perhaps that moment was the start of something new. Jasmine ran her fingers through Sophia's hair, observing every detail. She felt nervous, but her friend's excitement spurred her on. "You look beautiful," Jasmine said hesitantly. Sophia turned her head from side to side, analyzing the cut in the mirror. A wide smile broke out on her face. "Beautiful? I look amazing. I look like I've been to a luxury salon." Jasmine's chest warmed at those words. "You've got gold on your hands, Jasmine." She shook her head. "It was just luck." "No way! This talent needs to be seen. I'm sure my co-workers will love it. You need to cut their hair too." Jasmine laughed, not knowing if Sophia was serious. "Sophia, I'm not a professional. How could I do that? Leave it to me. Tomorrow we have an event at the consortium. There'll be lots of people wanting a makeover. I'll take you and advertise you. What do you think?" Jasmine hesitated. The idea was frightening. "Sophia, I've never done anything like this. And yesterday, you'd never had your hair cut professionally either. Look how far you've come." Jasmine took a deep breath. The fear was still there, but a small voice inside her whispered that maybe this was the opportunity she so desperately needed. "Okay, but I can't promise anything." The next day, Sophia picked her up from home. Jasmine's heart was racing as she climbed into the car. "Relax, it'll work out," said Sophia, sensing her tension. They arrived at the consortium's luxurious building. Jasmine's eyes widened at the sight of the imposing lobby, where elegant women were chatting animatedly. "I shouldn't be here," she muttered. Sophia ignored her. "Girls, meet the most talented hairdresser I've ever seen. She transformed my hair and can do the same for you." The women looked at Jasmine with interest. "Did she really do that to your hair?" asked one of them. "Yes, and it's perfect." An executive with long, dark hair came forward. "If she's as good as she says she is, I want her to cut mine." Jasmine held the scissors in her sweaty hands. She couldn't fail. I can try." The woman sat down, and Jasmine began to cut, concentrating on every detail. When she had finished, the executive looked at herself in the mirror in surprise. "Wow, that looks fantastic!" The other women looked at each other. "I want some too. Can you do mine next?" Suddenly, Jasmine was surrounded by customers, and her insecurity began to give way to a new feeling: confidence. The movement around Jasmine increased as more women approached, interested in her cuts. She couldn't believe what was happening. "Next!" called Sophia, laughing excitedly. A blonde woman sat down in the makeshift chair and looked at Jasmine skeptically. "Let's see if you're as good as they say." Jasmine took a deep breath and picked up the scissors. Each strand that fell to the floor strengthened her confidence. When she had finished, the woman ran her fingers through the strands and opened her eyes wide. "It's perfect!" she exclaimed. The surrounding group murmured compliments. Jasmine felt a warmth rise in her chest. For the first time, she felt like she was good at something. Across the hall, a tall, well-dressed man was watching her intently. His analytical gaze didn't miss a single detail. Fred crossed his arms, impressed. He didn't know the woman, but the way the executives came out beaming after each cut had caught his attention. He walked towards the group and stopped behind Jasmine. "Who taught you how to cut hair?" Jasmine turned around in surprise. She found herself in front of a man with a strong presence, attentive eyes, and a neutral expression. "Nobody," he replied hesitantly. "I just do it the way I think it's pretty." Fred raised an eyebrow. "Interesting." Sophia joined the conversation. "Fred, this is Jasmine. She's a natural. You need to see the cuts she's made." He watched her for a moment before asking, "If you had the right space, could you do more than that?" Jasmine's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Fred crossed his arms. "We have events all the time. Women love to change their look on these occasions. What do you say you work with us officially?" She blinked in disbelief. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an opportunity, but only if you're willing to take it." Jasmine felt her world spinning. How could she have gone from absolute abandonment to a chance like that? She looked at Sophia, who smiled, encouraging her. Then she looked back at Fred. "I accept." Fred nodded. "Good. We'll start at the next event." Jasmine felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She still didn't know where it would all lead. But one thing was certain: her life would never be the same again. Jasmine was still trying to absorb what had happened. A real job. A chance to start again. The next morning, she got ready for her first official event at the consortium. Her heart was pounding as she walked through the luxurious doors of the building. Fred was waiting for her in the main hall. "Good morning, Jasmine," she forced a smile. "Good morning." He noticed her nervousness and crossed his arms. "You'll do a great job. Just do what comes naturally to you." She nodded, trying to calm down. The women began to arrive, each asking for a different cut. With each snip, Jasmine's confidence grew. The buzz grew. Everyone was talking about the event's new hairdresser. In the middle of the bustle, a silver-haired lady entered the salon. Her attentive gaze scanned the room. Fred approached her with a warm smile. "Jasmine, I'd like you to meet Leon." The old woman looked at Jasmine curiously. "So you're the new sensation?" Jasmine laughed awkwardly. "I'm still getting used to it." Leon smiled. It's rare to find people with a real gift. Suddenly, her expression changed. Her hands began to shake and she clutched her chest, breathing hard. Fred was alarmed. "Grandma, someone call a doctor!" Jasmine acted before she thought. She took Leon's hands firmly and spoke softly. "Look at me. Breathe deeply with me." The old woman gasped, frightened. "Breathe in." "Yes. Now let it out very slowly." Fred watched, tense. "Tell me 3 things you see now." Leon blinked. "The carpet. The curtain. You." "Good. Now 3 things you can touch." She moved her fingers. "My skirt. The chair. Your hands." Her breathing began to steady. "Now 2 things you can hear. The clock. Your voice. Fred let out a breath, relieved. Jasmine smiled at Leon. Better? The old woman nodded, holding her hands. You have a kind heart, my dear. Fred looked at Jasmine with new respect. How did you know what to do? Jasmine shrugged. My mother had anxiety. I learned to help her. Leon stroked her hand. You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago. Fred looked at his grandmother, intrigued. Something inside him told him that Jasmine would change their lives in a way he didn't yet understand. Jasmine left the event feeling a mixture of pride and tiredness. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her life was taking a different turn. She arrived home to find Linda and Richard playing on the carpet, while Santiago slept peacefully. Sophia had stayed with them and smiled when she saw her. So? How was it? Jasmine sighed, taking off her shoes. It was incredible, but intense. You're building something big, girlfriend. Before Jasmine could answer, there was a knock on the door. Her heart raced as she recognized the silhouette through the glass. She opened it, and there was Samuel. Time seemed to have stopped. He was tidy but seemed tense. His eyes traveled over her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Can we talk? Jasmine crossed her arms. What about? He hesitated. Can I come in? She opened the door reluctantly. Samuel looked around, as if the house was strange to him. Linda ran up to him. Daddy, you're back. He knelt down and hugged her. Hi, my princess. Richard stood still, looking at him suspiciously. Jasmine stood her ground. Just say what you want, Samuel. He sighed and looked her in the eye. I made a mistake, Jasmine. A terrible mistake. She said nothing. I thought I needed a woman like Patricia, someone to elevate me socially, but... He ran his hand through his hair. She never loved me. I was just a trophy to her. As soon as she got what she wanted, she discarded me. Jasmine felt a twinge of irony. And now you want to go back? Samuel held up his hands. I want my family back. Let me fix it. She pulled away. You abandoned us. I was blind, but now I see what I've lost. Jasmine's eyes shone with something that was no longer pain. It was certainty. Samuel, you never lost us. You left us. He tried to argue, but she held up her hand. I'm no longer the woman you abandoned. And I'm not going to diminish myself to fit your regret. Silence filled the room. Samuel looked at his children, then at Jasmine. So, there's no chance? She shook her head. No. Linda tugged at her father's shirt. Are you leaving again? He swallowed dryly and knelt in front of her. Yes, princess, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Richard crossed his arms. If you did, you wouldn't have gone. Samuel closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the truth. Without another word, he stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he looked at Jasmine one last time. I hope you're happy. And then he was gone. This time, without leaving anything behind. Jasmine stood in front of the closed door. The silence in the house seemed heavier after Samuel's departure. She looked at her children. Linda held on tightly to the hem of her dress, while Richard kicked the carpet lightly. Little Santiago slept peacefully, oblivious to everything. Sophia, who was watching everything, was the first to speak. Are you all right? Jasmine sighed, sitting down on the sofa. I think. Are you sure he didn't deserve a second chance? Jasmine looked at her children and then at Sophia. He had a chance. He had many. But he chose to leave. Richard frowned. He's never coming back? She smiled tenderly and pulled her children into an embrace. That doesn't depend on us, my love. What matters is that we have each other. Sophia sat down next to Jasmine. Now what? What are you going to do? She looked down at her hands. They were still scarred from the work, by the change, from the effort to rebuild her life. I'm going to carry on. Sophia smiled. That's it. The next day, Jasmine returned to the consortium for a new event. She felt more confident. This time, it was different. She belonged there. Fred was waiting for her at the entrance. Punctual as always. Jasmine smiled. I don't want to miss any opportunities. He looked at her for a moment. You seem different. She raised an eyebrow. How different? More firm, like you've made a big decision. She looked away. Maybe I have. Fred didn't insist. He just smiled and motioned for them to enter. The event went perfectly. Women came and went satisfied with Jasmine's cuts. But in the midst of the bustle, she noticed Leon watching her. The old woman beckoned her to come closer. How are you, my dear? Fine, Mrs. Leon, and you? Better. Since you helped me that night, I haven't had any more seizures. Jasmine smiled, happy with the news. Leon held her hand. You're special, Jasmine, not just because of your talent, but because of what you carry in your heart. She lowered her eyes, touched. Thank you. The old woman squeezed her hand. You know, sometimes fate gives us second chances in unexpected ways. Jasmine frowned, confused. What do you mean? Leon glanced in Fred's direction, who was busy talking to a group of businessmen. She just smiled. Nothing, just a feeling. Jasmine felt a chill in her stomach but said nothing. Looking around, she knew that a new chapter in her life was just beginning. Jasmine looked at herself in the mirror of the small salon she had set up at home. The scissors in her hand reflected the soft afternoon light, and for the first time she saw a confident woman, master of her own destiny. The curtains swayed in the light wind, and the sound of children's laughter echoed through the house. Richard ran after Linda in the yard, while Santiago in his crib babbled disconnected words. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Hello, Jasmine, it's me, Fred. She smiled, recognizing the voice immediately. Hi, Fred. Any problems with the consortium? No, on the contrary. I just wanted to see how your first day at the salon was going. She looked around. It wasn't a luxurious salon, but it was hers. It's going well. A few clients came in today, and I'm starting to organize the schedules. I figured as much. Your talent speaks for itself. Jasmine laughed. Thanks, Fred. On the other end of the line, he paused before asking, What do you say we have dinner tonight? She was surprised. Dinner? Yes, something with no strings attached, just two people who admire each other talking about life. Jasmine bit her lip, pondering. For so long, all she had thought about was surviving, looking after her children and finding a way. But now, she could choose something new. She took a deep breath. I think that's a great idea. Fred smiled on the other end of the line. I'll pick you up at 8. After hanging up, Jasmine looked in the mirror again. This time, the woman she saw reflected was not broken. She was whole, and ready for whatever the future brought.